I was brought into what I very much hold in a sacred way now. My initiation into motherhood was through neurodivergence. So my oldest is on the autism spectrum. And what that meant for me is there were no cognitive challenges. I think that that's important to speak to because some people have misconception around that. But there were, behavioral, sensory, overstimulation, overwhelm, anxiety, all of those things. Finding meaning in the mess, finding that the chaos was the crucible, and also finding myself in what was not the hero's journey, but the heroine's journey. So in the hero's journey, we're going out, we're looking for the elixir out here. In the heroine's journey, to say it briefly, we're finding that within ourselves.
Welcome back to the Anniston Riekstins Show. I am so excited that you're here, and I'm excited to share a dear friend of mine, a woman that I have known for quite some time, and our paths continue to intersect in really amazing, creative, cool ways. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. And yeah, it's been wonderful to see the different ways that we've kind of weaved through life so far.
I think we've known each other long enough to at least be able to observe the different evolutions, right? And the growth. And I think it was when The Universe is Hiring had just been released, when you reached out to me, and I remember you saying, I'm in the process as well of, birthing this book baby. And which was so exciting to me because I've always been a fan of your work. And I think that what you do is so, so important in the world. And so for the benefit of our listeners, I would love for you to kind of take us to what part of your journey really cracked you open and informed the work that you are doing now.
Oh, goodness. That is a big question. And I love the question and I welcome it. And I'm like, thank you for, the words that you just spoke, because I felt them in my heart. And I was like, yeah, like we have watched each other from afar as we've been, journeying and growing ourselves into like the places that we're landing. Right. And so I'm reflecting on that. And I'm like, that has been really a gift. Yeah. Yeah. And I respect and honor and love your work so much too. So
thank you.
When you ask me that question, I actually have two, not necessarily stories that I tell, but two images, memories, stories, thoughts that come to mind. And the reason for that is, so I am a depth psychologist, and what that basically means is I'm very non-traditionally trained, and I work with dreams and the unconscious and the truth that resides deep in the body, as opposed to a lot of, cognitive behavioral work. There's a place for that. So we hold space for that too, but it's a lot deeper. And part of that work, involves even going back into stories of all time, like mythology and things like that. And really honors our story as something that is so important. Like when somebody asks me, like, what is my purpose? I'm like, you'll find your purpose in your story, right? Like you find it in yourself. And I know that that's a big message that you hold as well. And so the stories that come through when I sit with that are, there was a point in my life where the answer to that story would come through the lens of the hero's journey. Right. And so for those who are listening that may or may not know, I can briefly say and share that the hero's journey is an outline of a story, of many stories, of all stories and ways, where we are going through a period of our lives where something is calling us. In my line of work, it's often trauma or something that's happened in the past that's calling us to heal something. But something is calling us home. Something is calling us to be heard or seen within ourselves. And in that hero's journey, the hero often in the beginning does not answer that call, does not want to pick up the phone, does not want to face, the innermost cave or that journey. And then when the hero, is kind of either the call gets louder, right? Like you can't turn away from it anymore. Often we say in the healing world, it's like people will choose to do their work when not doing it hurts more sometimes. So that call gets really loud, and then it invites, the hero to take a step forward. They meet the mentor. Think of Star Wars or Karate Kid, right? Like the mentor shows up and then teaches them, mentors them before they go into the unknown. Then they go into the unknown and they slay, dragons and go through battles and bring the elixir that they find out here home. And so when I sit with that question and that story, there once was a time as a depth psychologist where I was so identified with that story. It's like how I brought people through the process of transformation. And I'd seen it and lived it so many times that I would say, like, well, my own hero's journey is what really opened me up and invited me to turn towards my own calling or my own trauma, really. Like we talk a lot about how well, I do, and I'm sure you do too, but like how the gold is within the pain, right? And so I would describe it vaguely in the beginning just to say, like, it was my own hero's journey, although there were very specific, deeply spiritual moments that really opened me up. I mean, without like wanting to honor the story without going into depths of it, and it's one that I share in my book, I would just say, like, one of those moments was actually literally hearing what I could only call like a voice from the sky. And so the themes of what I'm sharing there too are like what really began to open me up was healing, doing my own work, turning inward. And then that started to really open something deeper in me, intuition, connection, etc. The other part that I want to share, though, that's really interesting, and I now share from this different place and where my work has evolved, and it was its own journey in itself, is after, so being somebody in the world who's like, psychologist and, professional and consultant and clinical director and somebody who had, all of the hats and all of the masks that, anyone could want in ways, working for me, I entered motherhood from that space. I think that you'll align with this too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Entered motherhood from the space of, I remember my clients telling me, they're like, you're going to be the best mom, And I entered from this space of like, oh, and I have this therapy background. I'm going to know all of the things and I'm going to be able to just show up in all of the ways. And so, and so the book that I've written with the working title, The Art of Chaos,
which I love, by the way.
It's where we're going. Because I was brought into what I very much hold in a sacred way now. My initiation into motherhood was through neurodivergence. So my oldest is on the autism spectrum. And what that meant for me is there were no cognitive challenges. I think that that's important to speak to because some people have misconception around that. But there were, behavioral, sensory, overstimulation, overwhelm, anxiety, all of those things. And so from the time she was very, very little, she was screaming, she was crying, she was raging, she was struggling. And where this comes back to the first story I told of the hero's journey, it took me for a very long time. My daughter's going to be 9 very soon. And I consider my initiation into motherhood 7 years before I was like, okay, maybe I kind of can integrate some of this mess. And one of the things that really opened me up to the next evolution of my work, to come back to your question, was finding meaning in the mess, finding that the chaos was the crucible, and also finding myself in what was not the hero's journey, but the heroine's journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is very different.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very different, right? So in the hero's journey, we're going out, we're looking for the elixir out here. In the heroine's journey, to say it briefly, we're finding that within ourselves. I mean, that's the heart of right? Is we're coming home to ourselves. And for a long time, I didn't know what that meant. It was like I knew how to put a backpack on and, go travel to a third world country and find elixir in the extraordinary. But this was a journey of, not only being able to find peace and meaning within extraordinary chaos, but also being able to come home to myself and realize, and this is where I know we're going to align. It's like realize that the real magic was here, like all along.
You know what, though? It's interesting. And yes, we 100% align on that. I've thought a lot about this because, you know, I kind of blamed myself for a while. Like, why didn't I think of this sooner? Like, it was so obvious. You know what I mean? Like, until it wasn't until it was. And then I realized, I was like, but this is just the journey. This is the path. Like, you can't skip steps. You know what I mean? And I do believe that, yes, how we learn is not linear. However, there is an intelligence to it. And I do think we are more externally focused for a good reason, right? It's kind of like the 4 stages of awareness. It's like first you start with life is happening to me, then you move into life is happening by me. I'm taking life by the horns. I'm the manifester. I'm doing this, and it's all still externally focused, and you can still identify as the spiritual person, right? I'm doing spiritual things, but it's all still very external. Then you move into life is happening through me. Well, through me is through your body, right? You realize, like, Holy Grail, right here, always been here. And then you start listening, you start letting it guide you. And then eventually we hopefully tap into or go in and out of the as me, right? Where separation collapses and we become what we really are, which is one with everything. And so I think what you've just beautifully explained is the process, you know what I mean? Like your evolution into that. And I wanted to point that out because if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, yeah, I mean, or you're blaming yourself, or you ever think like, why, I had it wrong then. No, it was never wrong, right? It was just following this beautiful progression. And I think through us sharing our stories, like I know you so beautifully will be in The Art of Chaos, if that winds up being the title, that we get to see that. You know what I mean? The hero's journey or the heroine's journey, there's never a final destination. It's always just another beginning. Like, you know what I mean? When you get to the end of it and you think, I'm done. Nope, that's just another beginning of another hero's journey. Like it's always ever flowing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we get little pauses or breaks in between. And I think that in ways we live for that when we live such deep inner lives, because, to kind of go back to the idea of mythology, it's like we do visit that underworld and we visit it more intensely in ways like we feel, I'll speak for myself when it's like, I feel pain more intensely than others do because I open to it. But I also get to experience joy more intensely as well, right? And the gifts that are on the end of going through the chaos or going through the transformation or the healing or whatever it is are immense. I mean, it's what, I live for in ways. So there's such deep meaning to it. And one of the things I love about teaching that and speaking to that is that, and even in my work with people, it's like I help them put back their stories together. Like taking this book at one point was called Stained Glass, and I love that name too, right? Because it was this idea of like, if we didn't live in all of these fragmentations, if like pieces of our stories weren't just like these shards of glass, right? And if we could see that if you put them all together, there's this entire beautiful picture.
I love that.
Be able to honor our stories as whole. And somewhere where my work has gone, which I found quite fascinating, is I moved out of the realm of, healing, this specific injury or whatever it is into life isn't really about healing as much as it's about wholeness. It's about integration. It's about all of the things. It's about being able to hold space and have the capacity in your nervous system to hold life.
That is so true. That's actually, I mean, and I love the stained glass metaphor. I can see it. And in my own journey and experience, I think reconciling and integrating all of the experiences, right? It's what it is what sets you free. It is that taking back bit by bit your wholeness. And it's, you really are a living embodiment of, and your work has become an embodiment of, that life is happening for you, right? And that when we can start to accept our soul's story, right, which is what our soul wanted to experience, and to start to quiet the ego story, which is telling us that it's wrong, or it's not on the right timeline, or that we're behind, or that we're flawed and we made all of our mistakes, right? Where it's when you get into your body and you start listening, at least in my experience, that you hear so much more clearly, no, this was exactly what you needed. This was exactly what you needed if you could only see. You know what I mean? And what I've learned is we don't see with our eyes, we have to learn to see with our hearts. And I think that's probably what you really, one of your gifts is to help people see with their hearts. So I would love to dive into your work a little bit more because, I have known many amazing women who have found themselves in a position of mothering neurodivergent children. And I'll be honest, like from the outside looking in, there's been moments where like, I don't think I could handle it. I don't think I could do that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure every woman listening who can probably relate to that, where you just, you see a mother with her child who is having an episode in the middle of a grocery store, and you're like thinking to yourself, like, how could you do that? I don't know if I could handle that. So like, how do you specifically support these women?
I was trying not to giggle because I'm like, how do you handle it?
Like, tell me.
Um, so in supporting these women, I think so. My work is very much moving into, which is hilarious for me, by the way. I don't know if you have these moments, but it's like, really, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going to end up. I was so resistant.
Right.
So my work is really moving into working with either family systems, like not necessarily like having the family in the room, but really architecting and creating a lot of support for all aspects of the dynamic of the structure of the family. And so I'm very called and drawn to work with what I would say awakening families, like people that are wanting to do more conscious work. Because where things exist right now in the world of spectrum, whether it's, someone who's on the autism spectrum or ADHD, anyone who falls into the category of neurodiverse, which don't even get me started because it's like, well, we're all neurodiverse, so we're all neurodivergent. And but in 10 years, we'll call it something else. It will have other qualifiers. But right now, anyone who falls into the set of phenomenons, which, people in white jackets have called autism spectrum or ADHD, it brings us to a place where in the world today, what's available to those people is so minimal, right? Like it's like your insurance will, provide you behavioral therapy if you go and get diagnosed by a psychologist that you have to pay thousands of dollars to, and you need to wait months, maybe a year or more to get into. So the first place that I started is really making it more accessible, whether that's through my nonprofit where people can get testing for less amounts. And just to qualify that, we're licensed in California and Nevada, so we can't do it all over the world yet. But there's ways that we can do it through coaching. So basically what I was saying in the beginning is like, I really worked to try and make it more accessible. So whether like we could help you get the informal testing through coaching, or we could help you get the testing that you need at a lower rate and get people moving through the process so that they could get services and resources. And I'll speak about it from the perspective of how I went through this with my daughter, because that's how this developed in me, right? And that's what we're talking about is these moments, these not even moments, these years of trial that we go through that
Yeah.
that you forge us in the fire. And so my experience with my child was from a very young age, like I think 1.5. I got her first into something called filial play therapy, which is attachment based. And to go back to where you were when you said in the beginning, we're like, we blame ourselves, right? That's the place that we start as women, especially as mothers. And so I was like, well, I must have, messed up when it came to the attachment, like something must be wrong with me. And so I started going through this journey of working on attachment. And eventually we worked with the therapist who taught us to bring that attachment work into the home. And we were doing play therapy at that point in home. And then I got into, and let me take a step back and say, so this is my journey with my daughter and how I was supporting her. But I also was doing my own work at the time, but I was doing it from a place of self-blame and from
Right.
a place of like, I was trying. So before I come over here into like, I always bridge. I live in this like, this paradox now, but I hold both sides, which I appreciate. And I feel like I was saying before, like I think all of us need more capacity to hold the and, right? So I feel like her story is kind of over here and mine's over here, but my story was I was holding it in a very spiritual light. I was holding it in this way of like, okay, well, if I can just find, the maternal lineage ancestor healing that I need to do in here, it will shift for her. And if I can just do enough energy work on me, it will energetically shift her. And if I can go back and I can find this trauma or whatever's coming up in me, it will help her. And that's what I wanted the answer to be so bad. you know?
Right, because that's the control, right? Then you still have some control there because
Yeah.
what she's experiencing clearly is she shouldn't be experiencing. So you need to fix her, right? By doing your own work. I see you. I get it. Because as from one
Yeah.
fixer to another, I see you.
Yeah, and we came into motherhood. I can speak for myself, but you probably may have had this experience too, where it's like I came into motherhood from a place of like such a deeply developed sense of self.
Yeah.
So it was not natural to me that like I couldn't just fix it all. I couldn't just like go into a cave somewhere and, do my work enough that it's going to transform her. And so I was stuck there, and I love the idea of conscious parenting. And so I was like reading all this conscious parenting and I was learning all this stuff, but I also was having these really hard experiences. Like I was, like subbing for a what is it called? Like a new mother's group where, the moms are all like, in a birth center, bouncing around on their little yoga balls with their, quiet babies. And I'm carrying my internal experience while I'm showing up as psychologist. And I'm listening to moms, give each other advice like, oh, well, your baby's probably crying because like your energy is just a little bit off. And or maybe there's just like, maybe you're feeling this and then your baby's feeling that. And while all of that has its space, like it caused me a lot of pain, right? I was already really struggling with my own journey into motherhood and feeling like I was failing. Um, so in that process, I was really going through it myself. I was also living in a multi-generational home where I was caring for my father who was becoming ill. I was dealing with my own mother wound stuff come alive as I saw my mom with my daughter. I saw things heal in me. I saw things break in me. I just was, add like marriage chaos into that. I mean, it just was a mess. And and so when I found myself in this heroine's journey, it was such a turning point for me. It was a sacred map. It was a blessing because for so long I was waiting for the mentor to arrive. I was waiting for that hero's journey to play itself out, and it wasn't. So when I realized, okay, I am in a different story now. I am on a different path now. This is different.
Yeah.
um, it allowed other things to kind of start to unfold. And I chose at that point to really like it awoke in me in a way where I was like, I need to go back into this journey and also consider like the other side, right? Like not just the spiritual that I'm holding, but also the science. And I was resistant to that at first. But so I went into the science of the journey, if you will. And so we did our filial play therapy, we did neurofeedback, we did neurosensory integration, we did work with chiropractors, we did art therapy, equine therapy. The list goes on, occupational therapy. And for a long time, we were still really, really struggling. And I felt like nothing was really happening or working or helping. And that was really hard. At one point, we were considering medication, which was like a total dark night of the soul journey for somebody as holistic as myself.
Right.
But I think over time, what I've really learned is that, well, holistic also means including all, like, what are the things that are going to best support your child? So, to kind of come back to your question with that journey is, so I feel like what I was like, I wanted to find the answer in what was true for me, you know, the ancestral work, the energy work, the trauma work. That's me. That's like who I am and what I do. And I wasn't finding it there. And so I had to go into this realm of really understanding, you know, the neurodevelopmental aspects of autism, ADHD, what it really is. It's not just like hypersensitivity or cognitive issues like people think it is. Like there needs to be a lot more awareness around, you know, what we're talking about when we're talking about kids on the spectrum. So I became more aware, and I learned and I studied and I grew and I learned all these ways that other children could find supports and parents could find supports for these kids that are not just behavioral therapy. It's not to say that doesn't have its place, but that's all that's offered, right?
Yeah.
So I went on this very long journey. Like I said, we're coming on 9 years now, and I think I'm kind of landing. You know, I'm like, okay, for a while, right? To speak to what you said, like
Yeah.
maybe some calm for a little while. But this very long road, which, and I'm so happy to say, I was such a blessing to come back to when it did start to happen. It was like, okay, I wanted it to I wanted it to be here, but then it brought me over here. But then it started to bring me full circle. Then it started coming through, even in my manuscript, I was going back and saying, oh, but this was the trauma that was coming up in me when my kid was having a meltdown that I couldn't resolve.
Yeah.
And this is what lives in my maternal line. And this is what is in the ancestor healing. This is what's in the psychospiritual field. So it wound up being both. And to answer your question now, you know, how do I support mothers? It's like I hold that entire journey of wholeness now. It's let's look at the supports that are going to be helpful for your child. Let's look at nutrition. Let's look at, you know, things that might be it's being experienced as toxic loading, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at what supports are going to be most useful and supportive for regulation, or a lot of these kids have issues with like muscle strength and core strength and things like that. So occupational therapy, whatever it is. So really creating the supports, like putting that in place for them, but then taking mom on the journey of like,
Yeah.
what is the meaning of this? And these kids, and I'll end this by saying this. I went to a retreat for mothers of autistic kids recently, and it was such a beautiful blessing. You know, I felt like, okay, I'll go and I'm sure I'll feel supported and there'll be some, you know, like-minded experiences and that will feel good. I can have a hard time fitting into groups as participant. So I just kind of held it as like, well, we'll see if I make it, you know, if I
Say it. Same.
like, but I did. And one of the reasons is because the women that ran the group were just such beautiful blessings, just incredible women and authors and mothers of neurodivergent children. And they joined the group as participants. I mean, it was just, I could tell you more about this some other time, but but it was life-changing, and it was so beautiful. And at the end, I said to the moms before I left, we were in this really beautiful circle around this water fountain, and I said to them, I said, before coming here, I knew that these kids were special, right? I've seen my daughter work out past life trauma, like since she was 2 years old. I've seen her tell me about, like, I was a doctor in Italy, and this is what happened. Like, I've seen her predict, my father's leaving this earth. She knew when I was pregnant with my Yanyos. They're so intuitive, special, incredible beings, these kids. And so I was saying that, and then I said, what I didn't realize before I came here is that the people that these kids choose are really special
Of
people.
course.
The moms are just amazing.
Yeah.
So I'll end there with that long journey, circle story, and hopefully all the pieces, make sense there, because it really had to bring me in this full circle to this place where now I feel like I really can offer you holistic support.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much there that we could unpack, like so much. But what came forward for me was, well, number one, that, we all have teachers, right? All of us do. And sometimes that teacher comes in the form, and at any given time, we have multiple teachers, but our children are also our teachers. And I think that sometimes we lose, we're so in the 3D role, right? That we're meant to, you came through my body, thus I am responsible for your entire path and your life and your happiness and all of the things. And we're missing the gold. I actually just did a story this morning about it, because my son is wildly self-assured and confident. And he wanted to wear this outfit to camp. I was afraid he was going to get made fun of. I projected that onto him, tried to encourage him to maybe tone it down. And then he very lovingly reminded me that it's Wacky Wednesday and he gets to be as wacky as he wants to be. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still working through it. There it is. Like, he was reflecting back this beautiful aspect of me, right? That is still there. That's still the little I need to go deeper on, that I'm still, a little bit afraid of being too much, or of being, and he's just thankfully conscious enough to be like, Mom, that's yours. It's not mine, And, but I think that, in your story, like, that first step, it sounds like to me, is just true acceptance. I mean, I would imagine, right? It's like, it's accepting that this is, right? That your child has this condition, call it a blessing or a condition, same, or a miracle, and that this is what is meant for you to experience and what they are meant to experience. And with this acceptance, though, is this a daily thing? Like, is this something that you have to come back to over and over and over again, where you're just like, I accept that right now it's feeling challenging, and right now it's feeling hard, and I don't want to deal with it, right? Or like, as we do with an illness or a chronic disease or whatever, where we just want it to go away. We want to fix it so it can go away.
Mm-hmm.
How do you practice that radical acceptance, over the long haul?
Yeah. I mean, I think grief is part of that, right? We only get to acceptance through grief.
Right.
Um, there were times where I was so angry around my mom friends that had, neurotypical experiences, right? It just bothered me so much. And especially, like, and it's to no fault of their own. You don't understand this experience if you haven't been in it. Like, you don't. And so, but people would say to me, like, oh yeah, that's normal. My kid has tantrums too. And it's like, no, but like, you can leave the park when your child's like done, or when you're done, with them playing. You have to get on to the next thing. You can transition. And maybe your child's going to be upset for, 5, maybe 15 minutes. Mine is going to vehemently arch her back so that I can't actually get her into a car seat while she's screaming on the top of her lungs to such a point of physical nervous system discomfort in my body.
Yeah.
for the next hour and a half, right? Like it's not the same thing. So I remember feeling and going through a period of just so much grief. And I remember recognizing it and I identify with the in life feeling like you're too much, right? Because and also having done the work where I can stand and be like, I'm so glad I'm too much. Like I'm an incredibly intense woman.
Mhm.
That's okay. You know, so I actually like really honor the too muchness, but where it hurts is you don't often fit in the world.
Yeah.
It's right. So I already felt, like I don't necessarily fit and belong in certain ways. And then I had this child that, like, wherever I brought her, the moms would sit down in a circle and eat their lunch with their little babies on their lap. And mine is in the river, like after
Yeah.
ducks or whatever it is. And people laugh about that, like, that's so awesome. Like, you've got like a wild child, it's like, it is awesome. It is. There are blessings to it. And it's also like really hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
So, so I would say grief was probably where I had to go in order to come into acceptance. But yes, to your point, I think that acceptance is a consistent practice with this level of challenge, and um I can say now I'm really happy to say that after all of the work that we did during those times of early intervention and feeling like I don't really know if this is working, I feel like I've gotten a lot of validation now from different practitioners. We do craniosacral is another one that I highly suggest if you have that resource or ability. And we'll hear from different practitioners that, like, your daughter has such a beautiful mind body connection that actually doesn't not only exist usually in young kids, but in neurodivergent kids, especially. And so there's been a lot of peace, can I even say, like settling into like, okay, that was really hard. Like that was a massive, difficult time. When these kids are really little, it's so hard.
Yeah.
But it's not every day now.
Yeah.
And so the days when it is really tough, if my kid gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and decides they also have these, speaking for her, she has these wonderful big ideas. Right? And you don't want to be someone, I don't want to be someone who's limiting big, wonderful ideas. I mean, you're meant to be this incredible person in the world. But the ideas are not like, my child doesn't ever want to like color with me, right? Like she wants to rent a bus. She wants it to be lime green. She wants as many seats. She wants to go down to the homeless shelter and help these people. And then she wants to, do this thing with animals. And, she wants to save the planet, which is awesome, but she'll yell at the like cafeteria lady for not recycling. Like it's intense. It's awesome, but it's
Yeah.
also really intense. So it depends on the day. And I just have to keep coming back to like the beauty of it and also the challenge of it. And the truth is, the ultimate healing or acceptance that I can speak to now resides fully in the nervous system.
Yeah.
I've had to do so much work to get fully embodied.
And man, your resilience and your capacity, because you can't, it's earned. Like, right? It's putting in the miles. It's putting in the reps. It's showing up and being present for every little lesson and trigger and experience that life throws your way on a daily basis that builds that strength. And I do believe when we're here, the bigger the mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more that resilience is needed. And life's going to always be qualifying you and preparing you, right? And we don't always see that, right? We don't see in 15 years, Nicole, when you look back and you're like, thank God I have the nervous system I do. I could never do the work that I do. You know what I mean? And I could never impact all of these people. And all those years and those minutes and those moments when I was in despair or I felt like I can't do this another minute, you know what I mean? Like, is what has prepared me for this moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's when you think of it that way, you know, when we sit down and we watch the blockbuster movie and we see all that has to happen for, you know, following that hero's journey, right? For that person to succeed in the end. And more than that, to realize he or she was always greater than she believed herself to be. It couldn't have happened without all the challenges. It would have been a really boring story, number one. You know, we just went straight to the good. But I just think your story so beautifully demonstrates that, you know, we're given exactly what we need to fulfill our mission, but more than that, to become whole again, right? Because it's not just about, I know we think it's about what we're here to do and serve, but becoming whole is serving, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and then serving is becoming whole. It's like interchangeable. I love that you approach your work from such a holistic and spiritual and open mindset. Like I love that you use you know, non-traditional tools to support your clients. So can you speak into a couple of those? I know I was like checking out, I was perusing and checking out your website, and I saw like EFT tapping, and I saw somatic, you know, somatic exercises, and then past life regressions. Like, I'm just intrigued. So
Yeah.
what tools do you feel are have been just incredibly impactful for your clients?
Yeah. So, let's see. So there's many. And what I would say is I really use intuition. So I'm also I'm transitioning out of this role, but I've spent years in the role of teaching therapists how to do therapy. So being a clinical supervisor and director. And I've really taught people to use their intuition in the room. And so that's what comes through first is I know where I need to go because of what's guiding me here, and the ability to tap in intuitively and be aware comes from doing this work, right? Like doing all the work that we do on ourselves also gives us access to wholeness, integration, intuition, coming home, getting the answer in the body,
Yeah.
right? I'm so embodied at this point that all the answers are just right here, you know, and kind of in a humorous way, you know, I've been literally in meetings with people where my body's just like, nope, you know, we'll just start saying no, and I'm like, okay, hold on, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So so I really want to just say, like I've really learned to hone and trust my intuition, and so that's my greatest tool and resource into what I bring into client work. And certainly there are different, you know, tools, resources, skills that you can bring. Story is a huge one for me. Like, I want to know your story. When
Mhm.
people don't know what their story is, which is most people I've come across,
Yeah.
it's wild to me because I'm like, but that's who you are. Like, that's what you came here for. Like, all of those things, like we're saying, like, create the whole. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what if you thought life was just Monday through Saturday, Sunday, or whatever, you know, like,
Yeah.
so, so story is a big part of it. Using my own body as a barometer, if you will, or a tuning fork to really know what's happening in their body. Paying attention to intuition and what comes through, but also paying attention to patterns. I'm really good at recognizing patterns in people, right? Like, we continue to repeat these patterns until we do the work and we make these shifts. And then something that kind of changed in my own evolution of therapy and coaching is recognizing that you can't, like the insight work is so important. I don't ever want to take away from that, because I think there's so many people out there saying, like, you know, I can do so much more than talk therapy. And it's like, well, that's great, but don't forget the talk therapy. Don't forget the
Yeah.
right? Because the insight and the communication and the expression is part of the journey and the creation of healing and becoming whole.
I will attest to that as well, because I think we feel like it's pretty safe when we're on our own, we're journaling it out. But man, you start speaking it out, you activate it. You speak it, you activate it, you can feel it again at a whole other level. And that's where I've found the greatest progress, was when I was willing to say it out loud, right? And to have that beautiful. I mean, some people, thankfully I have a husband who is willing to be my witness, right? And to listen and to hold space for me and not need to coach me or fix me or whatever. But a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that in their life, right? And that's where I think someone like you or looking for to have that person that like is safe space 100% all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also to have the witness, right? Like not even just that they're safe, but there's something about like a soul being with your soul that just brings this story to life. And then also I believe really in creating, sacred space. And when you do, the things that need to happen there can happen. So, yeah. So I want to come back to your question, but I think I lost myself a little there. You might have to help me.
I know I might have lost it too. I got so distracted. But the tools. So yeah.
Okay. This is why. So we're trusting intuition here. This is why it's not coming through fluidly. So let me just say it this way. I have realized through my journey, even though I have all of the tools and resources now and I can teach people how to do it, etc., I'm not actually usually the one-on-one coach anymore.
Yeah.
I'm actually training the people to do the work. And so what I've realized in that is that all along, I just didn't know this. I was like honing it, right? But didn't know it. As soon as I could supervise others, like as soon as I had been a therapist long enough that I could then train others, they came to me like in droves. Like the amount of people that come to Sacred Path is beautiful. It's a blessing. Like how many people that want to work with us. And so I've had the opportunity of training many therapists. And I realized over time through that work and also my client work that what I'm really skilled at is that beginning 1.5 hours. Within 1.5 hours, I can tell you energetic patterns in your life that need to shift. I can tell you, what I see as far as your story that you might not see. I can see where the full circle of that story might be going. What supports need to be in place for your own individual work, maybe your couple work, maybe your family system work, supports for your children, etc. So I actually have landed my work in a place where I'm really doing that, what I'm calling like sacred architecture work at this point, where I'm sitting with people and I'm creating for them within that time, like, here's the map, here's the plan, here's a grant. And then I'm providing resources, from the people I work with to work with them. But I'm not so much doing that one-on-one work. It's not that I'm not doing it at all, but it's fewer these days. So the reason I'm saying that is I'm like, yeah, I'm having a hard time saying, what do I do one-on-one? Because I'm not doing it so much at this point. But the tools and resources, just to come back to your question, like certainly somatic work, getting into the body, like what is the body saying? And when you really embody yourself, like you will know the truth, like you will have the answers here. And sometimes the answers I don't know. And that's clarity too, because maybe you're in like an in-between phase for your decision or whatnot. So somatic work, EFT, is, for those that don't know, emotional. So there's two EFTs and I get them mixed up. So
emotional freedom technique, or emotional, tapping, right?
Yeah. So emotional freedom technique, which is tapping. I worked with a profound healer at one point that used tapping to actually shift energy. And once doing that with her, I mean, I had an experience once where I was sitting with her. I won't go into it, but I had this like traumatic experience like at the doctor, and I came to her for our appointment and I couldn't speak. Like I was like, I probably need to end this session. I'm not okay. And within an hour of like working with her, shifting energy, using EFT as resource for like tapping and moving energy.
Yeah.
It was fine. I was
complete
full circle. So I became a believer. I didn't start as a believer. I was like, what are we doing?
Why are we tapping on these points? I know. But you know what? I also think it's somewhat it was a relief to me. I think when I realized just number one, how powerful we are to heal ourselves, like to have, to be able to utilize a tool, but don't forget you're the most powerful element in this, right? And it's the willingness, the openness, the belief, and the knowing that I am energy, right? Like I know I feel physical right now and I can feel my body and I can touch my body, but I am not physical. I am energy, right? And so that means that like an energy can be transformed. That is a scientific fact. Like you can't destroy it, but you can transform it, right? You can shift it into a different state. And so I think EFT is a really good gateway. It's like a gateway energetic tool, that people can kind of dabble in and not feel like it's too out there.
Yeah. 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 And I think, for those that appreciate the science around it, if you go and look into things like acupuncture, they talk about different meridian points on the body. I went at one point, and because I was doing not only EFT with this woman, we were doing like, it was a couple thing. It was so funny. We were doing like marionette marching. We were doing like all kinds of things with our bodies that felt so like just foreign to me. And I was like, I
Yeah.
can bring that into my therapy.
Sounds like energy medicine. Is that what it was? With Donna?
She did. It wasn't with her. Like it was, she was I think her background was as a therapist. She had become a coach, and then she did energy medicine too. So it made sense to me over time, but I was resistant to it at first. So I'm just saying, like, those who feel resistance,
Yep.
you go and look up the science and it makes you feel better,
Yes.
Right?
You appease the mind with a little bit of science, and then you're like, okay, this is fine. This is safe.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. And then I saw that you mentioned past life regression as well, and in between life, which, interesting fact, Rudy and I actually both did a life between lives regression, which was wild. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but like wild, but also really healing in a lot of ways. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I forget where I mentioned it, like where you would have read about it. I don't
have your website.
Okay. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say like I do that with people. Sometimes it happens and that's where we go. But I've done this work on myself, and I will certainly with past life stuff for those that are open, especially since you've done some of this work yourself, right? It's like the interesting thing about going into past life work, in between life work, the most fascinating thing for me is like we're still the same soul.
Yeah.
And people around us are still the same souls. Like it's like you don't even have to, right, see them as they are. Like they could be a completely different gender.
But you sense them.
You sense them, it's them. So I have had sessions where it's been clear to me that like that is coming into the room, and I have done some with it, and I have some training in something called life-centered therapy.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fascinating stuff. So anyways, I feel like my experience has been really dabbling in all of the things, being really open to people, practitioners, working on me. And then that's naturally come into my work too. But like I said, I think I've more, I think my truth is more, I've developed this so strongly that now I can show up for people and tell them where to go, and allow the people to give them not the answers, but support them on that journey. But I'm not necessarily like taking them on that journey.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I get that. Like I remember for a while, it was always like, how am I going to incorporate all my tools into how I serve women? Right. And then I realized, well, I'm not going to incorporate all my tools into because not every tool is needed. You know what I mean? And that's where that intuition, that's where it comes in. It really is that heart-led, energetic approach to service that where you feel into the situation and then you will know, right? Like I will know, and I will use certain tools with certain women that I would never use with other women because it just doesn't feel right. Like it didn't feel intuitively like this was the right thing. But I think being open and being willing to just try different things is also just a good practice in life. Like it's just a good I always recommend to the women that I serve that if they are intrigued about something or something catches their attentions or bubbles into their awareness, and that they just pay attention. Like maybe this is something that I should try, but the tool should never subvert you. You know what I mean? Like you're the magic. The tool is just something to I think help facilitate an experience or catalyze something, but it never should become more important than the inner work, right? That you will find, right? And just sitting in silence, I think stillness is the number one tool. Like you want to really change, create a lot of space where you can be with yourself and listen, because that's really where the truth is. So I know we've gone a little long, but I feel like I could talk to you for hours, Nicole. But to close out, like I know that you are in the process of still writing your book, and that it is it's been an ever evolving journey. What has that journey taught you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it kind of brings us back to, which I can appreciate the full circle today. It might bring us back to the beginning where I was really talking about these two different journeys, referring to the heroes one and the heroines. Because I think what my book taught me was wholeness and integration. It started in a place of, I want to write about meaning. That's like been something that's been so like just dear to me my whole life, has been this feeling of, okay, but like, what is the meaning in that? There's meaning in all things. And I know that can be a really painful message too. And so I'm very gentle with that, especially when it's in relation to trauma or great loss, suffering, right? But it really started in this place of, I've been through, right? The bigger the mission, the more obstacles and ways. Excuse me. And so for me, I've been through so many really big, challenging experiences in my life, and I'm able to alchemize them and create meaning from them. And so I wrote this book from that place of like, I want to share that with others. I want others to be able to alchemize their pain into beauty and into meaning. And I tied the book up, in a pretty bow and sent it off to my editor. And I'm like, this is great, right? Enter motherhood, because I've been writing this book for 10 years. So enter motherhood, which became a part of the book. It was kind of like, we'll add that in there because, but I didn't really want it to be about motherhood. It wasn't the intention, because motherhood to me at the time felt like such unintegrated chaos, right? Like it was like, that is not the place I want to be writing from.
You're like, I'm still trying to figure this out myself. I'm not in a place right now to be able to teach it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I wound up ending the book at one point really from unintegrated chaos and just saying like, I'm in the mess too.
Yeah.
And that became meaningful for me as well. It was like, yeah, but that's the truth. And that's the truth of the times, right? Like no longer are the days where you're going to see your therapist, your guide, your mentor, and thinking that they're totally okay. Yeah. We're all in this. No. We're all in.
The gig is up.
The gig is up. So we might be okay. We might have more tools and resources, but we're still in this land together. Anyways, it came to this place of, I had people come along in the journey and support the process of the book. And as they did one by one, it became more like, I want you to tell more of the story. I want you to tell more of the story of this motherhood journey. And so anyways, as I started doing that, and I kind of took these two books then and put them into one, And I recognize that, the difficult experiences that I once shared about and wrapped up in a pretty bow came back to life when I became a mother, right? Because like maybe I healed it in the self, but now I see how that came up when I was mother. And so it wound up becoming this new evolution where what I was really learning was not just healing, story, spirit, meaning. Those things are true, but it really became about integration and wholeness,
Mhm.
all of it. And so that's what I would say. Like, what did it teach me? It taught me deep integration. It taught me wholeness. And then on a theory side, I'll just throw in very briefly my newest fascination with autism, because I'm really curious about it now as an energy, just like everything is, a frequency, and
Yes.
the psycho-spiritual field where these children are holding more than the current body and nervous system have the capacity to hold.
Ding, ding, ding. There you go.
Would,
I 100% believe it. They're high frequency beings.
Mhm.
That this physical 3D body, my son has, he definitely brought a lot of energy with him. And he has a lot of tics and things. And I see it as it's just his nervous system is like, whoa, like there's a lot of light coming and a lot of energy. But I think that by even just reframing and reperceiving these children as the incredible light beings that they are, right? That have brought these gifts and that are going to be holding these incredible frequencies for us on the planet, and very much for a purpose, right? And at this time, I think we're going to see more and more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I keep getting the chills when you say that. Yeah, because it's like these kids have come to change the world, right?
Yeah, they have.
It
Yes.
did not look pretty. They did not come to conform to the ways of the past.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
yeah, yeah.
Of how children are supposed to look. You know what I
Right.
mean? And supposed to act. And you are trailblazing a path forward for so many mothers who are going to just be so blessed by your willingness to share and your willingness to lead the way and to follow your intuition and your nudges, and even when it's hard and even when you're tired and even when it's exhausting, because you're doing it for so much more than just you and so much more than just your children, because it's also about them, right? And how to better understand them. And so I just want to encourage anyone who's listening and who can relate to any of this personally, or someone, like, definitely seek out Nicole. I'm going to link all of your information and put it all in the show notes so you know where to find Nicole. She will be keeping us posted on when her book will be launching in the future, which I will be first in line for, and so excited to get my hands on. You are just such a blessing and so gifted, and I'm grateful to call you my friend. So thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely. And same to you. And thank you so much.
All right. We'll catch you on the next episode, sister. Keep shining. The world needs your light.